All right, so today we're going to dive into the core philosophy of Mark Manson's absolute mega bestseller, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Now, you've probably seen the title and think you know what it's all about, right? Well, the real message is actually way more surprising and honestly a lot more useful. Yeah, this quote right here, it flips the whole idea right on its head. This book is not a guide to becoming indifferent or apathetic. See, Manson's whole point is that it's impossible not to care about something. The real crucial question is, what are you choosing to give a fuck about? So how do you even begin to figure that out? Well, to really get a handle on Manson's method, we're going to break it all down into four, let's say, pretty counterintuitive ideas. And we're going to start with a really powerful concept he calls the backwards law. Okay, so this first idea, the backwards law, it gets right to the heart of why so much of the self-help advice we hear just doesn't work. It challenges the very idea of chasing happiness, which, according to Manson, is exactly where most of our problems start. So this law, which he actually borrowed from the philosopher Alan Watts, is pretty much the core of the entire book. It basically says that the more you desperately chase feeling good, the more you just remind yourself that you don't feel good, which, surprise, makes you feel worse. Let's look at a couple of examples of how this plays out. I mean, think about it, right? If you're desperately chasing wealth, your mind is constantly laser-focused on what you don't have. That pursuit itself just breeds anxiety and this feeling of not being good enough, no matter how much money you actually have. And it's the exact same logic here. Wanting to be desired puts this giant magnifying glass on every single one of your perceived flaws. It just makes you feel less and less attractive, no matter how other people might see you. And this is the big one. The constant, frantic chase for happiness makes you hyper-aware of every single negative feeling. It creates this awful feedback loop of anxiety where you feel like a failure just for having a bad day. It's a total paradox. So if chasing all this positivity just makes us miserable, what in the world are we supposed to do? Well, the path to a genuinely good life means turning toward our negative experiences, not trying to run away from them. And that leads us perfectly into our second big idea. Choose your problems. If chasing happiness is the issue, then what should we be aiming for instead? Manson's answer is surprisingly simple. Aim for better problems. First things first, we just have to accept that struggle is a part of life. It's completely unavoidable. The Buddha had a word for it, dukkha. Even from an evolutionary standpoint, negative emotions are useful. They're signals designed to keep us safe, not character flaws. And this all ties into the psychological concept called the hedonic treadmill. You know, this tendency we have to get a new car or a promotion and feel great for a minute, but then we just go right back to our baseline happiness. That carrot just keeps moving. And boom, right there, that is the solution. The goal isn't a life with zero problems. That's a fantasy. A truly meaningful and satisfying life comes from the process of solving problems. So the secret then is to find problems that you actually enjoy having and enjoy solving. And this brings us to what Manson calls the most important question you could ever ask yourself. Forget what do you want out of life? I mean, everybody wants the good stuff, the easy stuff. The real question, the one that matters, is what struggle are you willing to endure? Your answer to that is a way, way better predictor of how your life is going to turn out. So what determines the struggles we end up choosing? Well, it all comes down to our values. And Manson argues we need to be really careful about the values we pick. Good values, they're based in reality, they're helpful to others, and most importantly, they're things you can actually control, like honesty or hard work. Bad values are often the opposite. They're based on superstition, they're destructive, and they depend on other people, like being popular or liked by everyone. Okay, so we need to choose our struggles, and they have to be based on good values. But how do we actually do that? Well, that brings us to the third idea, which is the mindset that makes all of this possible: radical responsibility. This little thought experiment just nails the point perfectly. Imagine in one scenario, some mobsters force you to run a marathon at gunpoint. It would be a horrible, traumatic experience, right? But in the other scenario, you choose to train for months and run that exact same marathon. It could be one of the best, most empowering experiences of your life. The physical pain is identical. The only thing that changed is that you chose the struggle. But here's where a lot of us get tripped up. We fall into this really common mental trap called the responsibility/fault fallacy. We mix up being responsible for something with it being our fault. And trust me, they are not the same thing. This distinction is absolutely crucial. Look at it this way. A ton of things happen in life that are not our fault. We don't control them.
but we are always responsible for how we choose to respond. In every single moment, you are choosing your reaction, your interpretation, and your next move. Owning that choice, that is where all of your personal power comes from.
So, we've covered the backwards law, choosing our problems, and taking radical responsibility. This final idea is maybe the most powerful tool of them all for figuring out what truly matters, and that is confronting the end.
It's a heavy thought, I know, but it is also the most powerful filter we have. Manson argues that thinking about our own death is the ultimate tool for getting some much-needed perspective. And as Manson puts it right here, this is why we should think about our own mortality kind of like the ancient Stoics did. It forces us to cut through all the trivial anxieties, all the shallow values, and really ask ourselves what our legacy is going to be. It's the ultimate filter for finding out what actually deserves one of your fucks. Okay, so let's try this all together in a nice little bow. Number 1, stop chasing positive feelings and learn to accept the negative by understanding the backwards law. 2, choose meaningful problems and struggles that are based on good, controllable values. 3, take radical responsibility for how you respond to everything in your life, whether it's your fault or not. And finally, number 4, use the reality of your own death as a compass to get crystal clear on what truly matters to you. And that leaves us with one last really powerful question to think about. Answering this one honestly might just be the very first step to putting this entire philosophy into practice in your own life. What trivial concerns, what shallow values, what meaningless struggles would you just immediately let go of?